Out of the Ordinary Insights, brought to you by Investex Specialist Bank.
Welcome to Captains of Industry. I'm Lindsay Williams in Cape Town, and with me in the studio is a person who I suppose if they made a film about him it would be called From District 6 to Burger King. His name is Hassen Adams. He's the Executive Chairman of Grand Parade Investments. Hassen, thanks very much for coming in today. And congratulations, by the way, on the Ernst & Young nomination for Entrepreneur of the Year in Africa. That's quite an accolade.
Well, let's see if I can win it, but yeah, I'm quite chuffed about it. I didn't think that people would think that I would fit that sort of, position in terms of the nomination. But Lindsay, thanks for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure. We can determine whether you're worthy of that accolade throughout the next half an hour, but let's go back to your roots if you can, because I think if you look sort of that way, behind us here, there's District 6, and that's where you were born and raised.
District 6, yeah. I actually have a horse called District 6 also. Beautiful filly that just fell down, and that's how much I love District 6. And Grand Parade itself embraces District 6, But let me just tell you a bit about my background. I was born in 15 St. Philip Street, which incidentally falls smack on the axis of St. Philip Street and the Eastern Boulevard, which is now called the Mandela Boulevard.
Yes.
And the church is still there, and if you drive up the Mandela Boulevard, you'll see St. Philip's Church there. That's where I was born. I
drive down there every morning on my way to CNBC Africa, and the only things that are really remaining, I mean, there's some new developments, but are the places of worship, the mosques and the churches.
And I mean, all those mosques are there, Asplin Street and the Zavia Mosque right at the top at Warmer Estate, and the other mosque at the bottom here, which is they're all intact, and the churches too, the Stone Street Church, and it's quite amazing, when you go there, you get this sort of feeling of spirituality, which is unbelievable. I mean, I can remember as a kid, growing up in this sort of concrete environment where there was very little green spaces, so we played rugby and soccer on tar and on concrete. And I went to a little school called Rahmania, which was a school in the middle of District 6 and was focused on Muslim education. So there I got my serious punishment and reprimands. But, for me, it was a time when I actually started to learn what life was all about.
And entrepreneurship, of course, because one of the things that we were chatting about before this interview, we're talking about the way that your environment shapes you. A lot of people will say, well, if you have a very privileged background, then that sets you up for life. But on the other hand, you were talking about soccer. If you look at someone like Wayne Rooney, for example, one of the best players in the world, he came from a less privileged background. And maybe entrepreneurship skills are honed because of the fact that you've had privations, perhaps.
I have a firm belief that you can't teach entrepreneurship through an academic medium. Entrepreneurship develops as a result of you being a street fighter. And a street fighter means that your ability to survive in an environment that's normally very difficult. Now, in my case, I come from District 6, and when one day I got home from school, we saw all of our furniture being removed from the house that we lived in, and planks knocked across the windows, and we were forcibly removed.
You had no prior warning of this?
No prior warning. My dad was a barman, he's dead now, and he wasn't there, and my mum was on the stoop crying. And we didn't know what was going on, I was like 8, 9 years old. But my aunt came down. She had a house in a street called Springfield Street, which was parallel to Hanover Street, and there was a little lane from the Avalon Bioscope which led right to her house. She had a 2-room house with a kitchen, and she put us up there. The problem was that she could live in the one room, and my mom and dad could live in the other room, and my sisters were with my mom and dad in their room, and there was no place for myself and my brother to sleep. Now, in the olden days, you had those fold-up beds on wheels that you pushed alongside, and you can open it up in the passage and sleep. Now, because my father was a barman, he used to come home late, you see. So we couldn't get to bed early. So myself and my brother used to decide, now what are we going to do while we're waiting? When you're going to help the guys sell Argus.
The Argus newspaper?
The Argus newspaper in Hanover Street, and that's where it all started. You know.
Okay, so you became an entrepreneur there, and presumably you saved your money and you got a good education, because you then, let's fast forward a bit, you became an engineer. Yeah,
look, I mean, you've got to understand one thing. To become an engineer during those years was very difficult, because you weren't allowed to go to university without the permission of the state. So you had to go through all of those processes. So when you go and work for a company called Over Arab, it's an international company, and they took me through my diploma stage, you know, where I was the first guy ever to get a diploma in civil engineering at that time. The Trevor Manuels and all of those guys were all at Technicon with me, and we had great fun. I'm not even going to go into that because that would take up your whole show, you know. But nevertheless, you know, I then won an award the company that I worked for entered me in a competition worldwide, and I was the runners-up. Some Scottish guy won it. It was for everything paid for the London University to become a professional engineer. So the Universities of South Africa came to see me and said they're quite happy to sponsor me to go to any university of my choice, and I went to UCT. I didn't finish at UCT, but I became a professional, you know, technician, and I used to drive big companies. In actual fact, I became the chairman of a company called Ash Consulting Engineers, and from there onwards, we've won every single award in this country. That company has now changed to Naderson's Consulting, and I'm not going to go into that details, but Naderson's Consulting employs all the people in Cape Town that Ash used to employ. And we've won every award in engineering in that company, because I believed in a simple philosophy of naked in, naked out, where I didn't want to own the company on my own, and where the excellence in expertise would take over, and we gave the youth the chance to take shares in a company through profit sharing, you know. And today it's still the same thing, you know. It just grows and grows out of new entrants that comes into that company from an engineering perspective. We've given out a lot of bursaries, we've trained thousands of people, and I actually don't get involved that much with it.
But you're still involved in the engineering side of things, and your list of buildings that you've been involved in through the companies that you've founded or have been involved with are quite impressive. You've got the Investec building just around the corner here, you've got that new portside development, which is going to be the tallest building in Cape Town. So obviously you're still involved in the business on a hands-off sort of basis.
Yeah, look, I get involved with the design reviews, and if there are any problems, I'll jump on board and help. My job is basically to find the work, and because of my stature, I'm able to go and walk in open doors for the company. And that's what entrepreneurship is all about. It's about access. And access to opportunity, access to education, access to money, access to everything. Access is a very, very important word in my vocabulary. And I say this to people, you know, without access, you're nothing. You have nothing. You can't do it. If you're not healthy, if you don't have access to health care and wellness and so on, you know, it's all part of this whole makeup of being a good entrepreneur.
Well, we'll talk about that philosophy when it comes to Grand Parade Investments, but that'll be after the break, because there's still a few other things to talk about before we go to GPI, and that is your serial entrepreneurship. I mean, it's a terrible phrase, but you have started a lot of different businesses. I came to South Africa in 1988, Hassen, and the first meal I ever had was in a place with a red checked tablecloth in Bryanston. It was called Squire's Loft. You were involved in that, weren't you?
Well, I wasn't involved in Squire's Loft. You've got to understand that Squire's Loft migrated to Squires, and that's where I got involved. I see they want to start a new Squire's Loft in Johannesburg, but Squires in itself is where I got involved, and I bought a large share in Squires through a company called Sand Squires, and we grew the company to quite an impressive company, to the extent that I eventually sold that to Dubai. And all of my people went to go and work for them. The CEO of Squires worked for them. He's now back with me, and he runs Burger King. Yeah.
We'll come to Burger King later on, but there's another one as well, because over Christmas I was in London. I was walking down Carnaby Street. I went off a back street or something, and there in front of me was Cape Town Fish Market.
Fish Market. I mean, that was one of my first entrees into the food and beverage side. You know, a very good friend of mine, we've become like family now. The Kroegman family, Doe Kroegman, came to see me, and he said, Hassen, you know, I need a black empowerment partner But I can't fund you, you know. I mean, is there any way that you, I said, oh, you must understand one thing. I don't window dress, you know. I add value. And value means that I must put my money where my mouth is. And I went to go and bond my houses and everything to put into the first Cape Town fish markets, which was unbelievable. We've never looked back. I mean, you know, if I must tell you that some of those stores, like the ones at Gateway, phenomenal success, you know. London was a great initiative. Difficult though, you know. People think
the competition there is extraordinary.
Ah, man, you think you can go to London because there's such a lot of people in, but the British have their own eating habits, you know. Eventually we learn that they won't, you know, conform to what we want to give them, but what they want. And that's a good lesson to learn for anybody that goes abroad.
Catering companies as well, that's another thing. So there's a food thing, maybe that was to do with your mother or your aunts or something like that. But as I said, serial entrepreneurship. But then eventually we got to Grand Parade, and that's been the real feather in your cap, and we'll talk about it in detail after the break. But just give us an idea of how it started before we get into the meat of the story.
Well, can I just say, you know, during the early years, I went over to Malaysia with Mandela and to try and, you know, find opportunities with the Malaysians to bring to South Africa. And I brought quite a few companies over here, and one of the companies was Landmarks, you know, a guy called Datu Samsudin. And we decided that there's a great opportunity in the leisure market. At that time, they were going to issue gaming opportunities outside the urban areas, and we took up a site near Atlantis, and that's where we wanted to build this casino complex. But that changed quite a bit because it became a provincial competency. So all the powers of allocating licenses was devolved down to the provinces and their gaming boards. So Sun International came to see me and said, please, can't we come and talk to you, and maybe, you know, we could do something together. And that's how I got on board. And I said, look, you know, I'm happy to come on board, but I am not your empowerment partner. If you make my community your empowerment partner, I'm on board.
Okay, we'll leave it there and we'll get into the rest of the story just after this break. Captains of Industry will be back in a moment.